It is our moment to take, so long as we actually fight for it every single day.
The working class, the people that I represent in this campaign, and we'll leave it up to them to determine the outcome of who the next mayor is.
These are extraordinary turnout numbers.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One investigative reporter Courtney Gross. Election day is just 5 days away, and there's new polling shows Zohran Mamdani is still ahead in this contest amid allegations of Islamophobia all across the campaign trail. We will have everything you need to know about the race for mayor, especially ahead of you possibly going to vote. And then we'll take a deeper dive on Mamdani's policies. If he is elected mayor, what would the city look like, and will those promises actually happen? And joining me for the occasion for our pre-election episode is our Bobby Cuza.
Are we not going to talk about fake Bill de Blasio?
I actually don't have it in my notes.
No, we don't have to talk about it. It's just my favorite story of this of the entire campaign cycle. Should I give a quick recap?
I mean, yeah, we're wasting time on it, but sure.
I'll do it in 30 seconds.
Okay.
For those who haven't been paying close attention, there was an article in the Times of London, right?
Yeah,
about
sure.
Bill de Blasio basically throwing cold water on all of Mamdani's policy ideas. It turns out it was another guy named Bill de Blasio who is not Mayor Bill de Blasio, and this guy lives on Long Island, and apparently this happens to him all the time. And I
think it's spelled differently too.
It's spelled, it has a capital D, and there's no space between duh and Blasio.
Isn't there an I in there?
No, it's spelled the same. And this guy apparently always pranks people who think he's Mayor de Blasio. So he played along with the reporter from the Times of London and completely got this fake story into the newspaper.
Oof. That said that Mamdani was going to be not a good thing.
Yeah.
Which is funny because obviously we know where Bill de Blasio stands on that. He obviously is supportive of Zohran Mamdani.
Yes.
And the Zohran Mamdani expert is here, Bernadette Hogan.
Hello.
That's
I'm
it.
here.
She's here.
Hey, you told me we're tight on time
today. We are tight on time. Okay, so let's start with the polling we have heard within the last 24 hours from Quinnipiac, from Marist, and then this morning, Emerson College, obviously my alma mater. We know how I feel about that.
And Marist is my alma mater, so.
Oh, ooh, okay.
It's now university, though. I was there when it was the college.
So these polls came out, obviously showing that Mamdani is still ahead. They each have very different margins, anywhere from 10 points to Emerson had the largest spread, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was 25 points.
Ahead. Mamdani ahead 25 points.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of all over the map.
Yeah.
I mean, Mamdani is ahead, obviously. And by the way, these all came out in the space of 12 hours, maybe.
Right.
So they always come in bunches. But the first one that came out was Quinnipiac yesterday, and it kind of looked good for Cuomo. It was like Cuomo's surging, he's closing the gap. He was still down. I mean, still down 10 points.
He remained the same that he had. He was at 33%,
yes,
which was the same he had been at earlier.
Yes, but then Mamdani went down.
He went down.
So it was
points.
It just looked like maybe he's closing the gap. Maybe.
And Mamdani also, if you look at the borough by borough support, Mamdani was only up by 1 in Brooklyn, which is where he, was trying, his largest base of support in some of those neighborhoods there.
So I think that poll initially was maybe this is feeding the narrative that Cuomo has some momentum. Then Emerson comes out this morning and Mamdani's up 25 points, which is a lot. And he hits 50, which I don't know if I buy this theory, but some people think if you don't hit 50, you don't have enough of a mandate because you don't have a majority of voters haven't, actually voted for you. But 25 points, I mean,
I think that's true. I think you are a weaker mayor if you win by a plurality versus a majority.
A majority. Well, he hits a majority in this poll. I think he's right at 50%. But I was going to say, if Cuomo somehow pulls this off and wins on Tuesday, pretty big polling error for Emerson. I think that's going to be.
When Emerson has been pretty on top of it.
They've been right in the June primary. They were. I think they were the first ones. They were one of, if not the first poll that had Mamdani winning. They had him winning after ranked choice.
Yeah.
And that was right before election. It might have even been on Monday, right before election day. And that was the first poll where it was wow, Mamdani's might actually pull this off.
Yeah, I'm not just saying because I went to college there. They are typically pretty accurate. But 25 points to me, especially because I've been analyzing all of the early voting tally, and hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers have already been casting their ballots, and everyone is reading the tea leaves and analyzing these numbers and coming up with these conclusions based upon them. And we don't know if this is accurate, but we can try to hypothesized as well. Why not?
Why not speculate wildly?
Why not? So 52% of the voters that have turned out thus far early voting through day 4 are above the age of 55. Right. And we know polls across the board have really shown that older voters are pretty much
for Cuomo.
Pro Cuomo. So I think that there was just a feeling, a sentiment, an energy even post our debate that Cuomo maybe was stealing some of the momentum away from Mamdani. And it almost felt like the Mamdani people felt like that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I covered Mamdani at the Forest Hills rally in Queens where he packed the house, the stadium. It fits about 13,000 people, a little bit more. And organizers say that about 10,000 were there, of course, include security, reporters, staff, whatever. But, one of the big messages was like, don't be complacent. And Mamdani has then since had a couple canvassing launches throughout the city and where he said, I don't want to wake up like Andrew Cuomo did the night after the primary and realize that I could have done more and I didn't do enough.
I was also just with him at a senior center in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, and this was pretty much an entirely African-American population of seniors at the senior center. And I was going around talking to some of the seniors, asking them who they were supporting. And it wasn't like a huge Mamdani crowd. I mean, this was an older group of people. Some of them were like, I support Adams. Some of them said I'm undecided. Some of them were Mamdani, but this was not like a guaranteed crowd.
Some Jim Walden voters.
But that's interesting too, because I mean, like, Cuomo has always been able to dominate Black and brown voters. But what's interesting about that district that you were in, it's represented by a DSA member in the Assembly and I believe the Senate if you were in Jabari Brisport's.
It was Jabari Brisport's
district. But again, it's not necessarily representative of the left-leaning progressive ideology, even though it's been totally gentrified in that area.
You know what I noticed in the polls, though? Both Quinnipiac and Emerson asked people, have you voted yet? And because the polls were taken, I guess, earlier this week, right? And in Quinnipiac, those people who had already voted were for Mamdani by 26 points. So it's hard to parse this, right? Like, if early voters are for Mamdani in such huge numbers, and then we're seeing a huge early vote turnout that seems to be good but then they're older. I'm not sure what to make of that.
I mean, one of the supporters I just spoke to was like, I'm a Democrat. I support the Democrat.
I support the Democrat, right?
Right. So, I mean,
who's the real Democrat, though?
Yeah. I mean,
Andrew Cuomo says he's the Democrat.
But Cuomo's name is so in such like a bad spot. Like it's not
literally on the ballot.
Like on the ballot, you're looking at it and it makes no sense.
It's like bottom right.
Right.
Even in some of his, I think his last ad, he put out his last TV ad, which was actually not negative. And we need to talk about how negative he's been on the campaign trail. But his last ad that he posted on Instagram, I think yesterday or maybe this morning, I can't recall. The last part of it shows the ballot and shows like a little bubble of like where you're supposed to bubble.
Right, it's like follow the Yellow Brick Road to my name, which is, ballot position. Wasn't, I think Mamdani was number 1, right, on the primary.
There have been studies that show that it does matter.
It matters. It totally matters. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Cuomo, it seems like ever since our debate, I mean, he had like a decent showing from talking to people and watching it. He definitely was stronger or more articulate than he was, at least in the primary. And I think compared to the NBC debate, obviously I'm biased because of New York won, but still, it seems like he was carrying that momentum over the past couple of days, but has also been like intensifying the attacks.
But wait, I was going to say before we get to the attacks, he's also been getting endorsements, which like we know that, I mean, who knows if those are worth anything.
David Patterson? Are we saying that David Patterson's endorsement?
Bloomberg. I mean, Bloomberg endorsed him in the primary too. He got a lot of endorsements in the primary, and that didn't seem to help. But I mean,
and the question is like, who do these people like speak for? If somebody was like a Bloomberg like-minded person, they already probably were not going for Mamdani.
Yeah,
and they already had made up their mind.
And then some Republicans too just said that they were like, I'm thinking of Ina Vernikov said she had been with Sliwa and now she was changing to Cuomo. I think Joe Borelli said people should vote for Cuomo.
And I think Nicole Malliotakis, the congresswoman from Staten Island, said although she has been a fierce critic of Andrew Cuomo, she was a state assemblywoman. She's like, at the end of the day, we would rather it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, that kind of choice.
And the Cuomo messaging might also be working along with some super PAC messaging that has been out there, including this new group that's called like Stop the Socialists, but they're all on the same talking points that say voting for Curtis Sliwa is throwing away your vote. And that is exactly what Cuomo has been doing, making the rounds of all the conservative talk media. I mean, he's been on Fox how many times in the last week?
Yeah.
I mean, it is just trying to just hammer home with Republicans that don't vote for Curtis, you're throwing away your vote. And even the Quinnipiac poll showed that Cuomo was actually doing better with Republicans than Curtis Sliwa.
Took like 7 additional points compared to Quinnipiac's poll earlier in October. I think he was at 37%. That lead jumped up to about 44
among Republicans.
Yeah.
And you feel that on the campaign trail. You feel that with his talking points. I mean, it is such, to me, a shift to the right for Cuomo in where he's doing media appearances and what he's saying. And that probably brings us to some of the Islamophobia rhetoric that we were talking about in the intro. This started, I think it did start before our debate. I can't recall.
The Islamophobia?
Yeah.
Do we have to explain which Islamophobia we're talking about?
Okay. Well, it started, I think it first got some traction when Cuomo appeared on talk radio on WABC with Sid Rosenberg.
Also, wait, by the way, remember, I mean, there was some Islamophobia in the primary too. Remember there was the ad that thickened Mamdani's
But you
beard?
could say that was not Cuomo
because it was the
super PAC. Right. So it was Fix the City, the super PAC that obviously has spent millions of dollars supporting Andrew Cuomo, but nonetheless, it's not Andrew Cuomo himself. But Andrew Cuomo put out the AI-generated ad. I don't think we talked about any of this because we just talked about the debate last time. So it was the AI-generated ad. He was the appearance on conservative talk radio where Sid Rosenberg suggested that Mamdani would be dancing in the street if there was another 9/11, and Cuomo kind of chuckled. And then there was more instances. Well, there was just a Fox News appearance yesterday, on Wednesday.
And there was this weird thing that didn't get a lot of media attention, but when he was first endorsed by Mayor Adams, and they had that press conference together with Cuomo and Adams, Adams said this weird thing where he talked about how New York shouldn't become like cities in Europe, and he mentioned what did you say? Islamist extremism, I think was the phrase that he used, like seemingly suggesting that Mamdani would somehow bring Islamic extremism. And Cuomo obviously didn't say anything. But then the Maria Bartiromo interview on Wednesday, I thought was wild. I mean, she says, I actually took notes on this because I couldn't believe it when I watched it. I read the notes and I thought, this can't possibly be
I rewatched it this morning when we were texting about it.
Because she basically says, do you expect that New York is going to become, wait, I want to look at my notes so I get this right. Is he going to change the look of New York?
Yeah.
Basically saying that it's going to become majority Muslim and there's going to be women
like
covering
London,
up.
saying that everyone is like walking around like in a burqa or something.
Right. And then Cuomo, he kind of avoided that direct question, but then he went on this tangent about, it wasn't a tangent because they were talking about 9/11 and this whole thing with Hassan Piker, which we can talk about separately. But he said that Cuomo says Mamdani is from Uganda. His parents have this mansion there and he spends a lot of time there. He doesn't understand the New York culture. Like
if he's like
this outsider, foreigner,
other
who's from. Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? Like Mamdani. First of all, Mamdani was here on 9/11. He has probably spent more time in New York City. I mean, he's definitely spent more time in New York City than Andrew Cuomo has over the last 25 years. So arguably, Mamdani is more of a New Yorker in terms of New York City than Cuomo is, and Cuomo's making it sound like he's a foreigner who doesn't get New York values and doesn't understand what 9/11 meant to the city.
It's also a very anti-immigrant perspective or anti-immigrant talking points, and he's making this, once again on Fox News, like he is making a play for a particular type of voter here.
And Cuomo's always been obsessed with the polls, and when he was governor, spent so much money on internal polling. I wonder if there's internal polling showing that
this is working.
This is working, or this kind of language is what is, making the difference. But this is also what prompted Mamdani to make this speech last Friday that you covered, Courtney, where he, talked about, he never really talks about, I guess, he doesn't get as personal, like he'll get personal quickly, but then the times that I've seen him get personal is when he talks about his faith, but then just being like, I'm treated like the other, and like I don't
Well, and that
belong.
was kind of the main thrust of the speech, was that he has been downplaying his faith because he thought it was going to hurt him politically, but that he's tired of it.
The start of the speech is about an uncle saying you don't, when he decided to run for state assembly, like you don't need to tell people that you're Muslim.
Right.
And that was like, I'm no longer, the theme of it was like, I'm no longer living in the shadows. We don't have to live in the shadows anymore. And he was making the speech outside of a mosque in the Bronx.
"6 years ago, shortly after I'd announced I was running for state assembly, a well-meaning Muslim uncle pulled me aside. He smiled softly and looked at me with care. In a quiet voice, he told me I did not have to tell people I was Muslim. His eyes kind, his beard proud, and his face heavy with the implications of the unsaid. I had not learned the lesson that he had been taught time and again."
It was something else happened that day where it didn't end up being the lead to my story.
It was when Hakeem Jeffries endorsed him.
That's what it was.
Right. So
because I was like, I would have been the lead because it was an emotional moment, and he cried, and not like blubbering tears, but like it was like emotional. And he paused, and he was talking about his aunt not wanting to ride the subway because she wanted to wear her hijab, and she was scared to get on the subway because of that. It was like this. We don't know that much about his wife. There were all these like things that we know about him, but it was the most personal I've ever seen.
I think you're right, though. I think he wanted it to be like a momentous speech.
Yeah, but
then it got washed away in the news cycle because Hakeem Jeffries endorsed him. And by the way,
a lukewarm endorsement anyway.
And then Cuomo immediately had a news conference in Jackson Heights.
New Yorkers love the Muslim community. He claims that he is the victim of attacks because he is a Muslim. Nothing could be further of the truth. He is not a victim. He is the offender.
Completely dismissed the idea that Mamdani is some kind of victim, and he says Mamdani's the offender. He's the one who's offended the Jewish community and the Black community, and which I think is a little bit of a stretch.
So before we go into our deep dive Mamdani policy discussion in the second half of the podcast, our producer Anthony Roman will not be happy with me if we don't talk a little bit about the housing questions. And that's because, and I can tie this to Mamdani because I was just with him again, and for the third, fourth, fifth time, he said, I don't have a position on the housing questions. And everyone's like, how do you not have a position on those housing questions? Bern, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've done some reporting on it. So we know Mamdani refuses to take a position. Can you just explain what they are? Because people are confused by what they are. And maybe Bobby.
Yeah, you can feel free to jump in, but it's ballot proposals 2 through 5, and they basically have to do with cutting red tape, bureaucratic red tape. But what the council and critics don't like about it is that it basically removes city council power. It removes the speaker, it removes the local member. If, say, in Rockaway, Courtney doesn't want to have a big building complex go up near her house. I shouldn't even say you're from Rockaway, but people already know.
Yeah,
but then,
and I live in one of those neighborhoods.
Exactly.
That single family is double
Then any rezoning, any building effort would there would be less of a say from the local member, less, I guess, deference, right? And then also the appeals process would be really shortened. And then there's also one of the ballot proposals allows the mayor, the speaker, and the borough president to all just basically green light a project, but which is interesting because the borough president has no power really, and it would say the mayor and the borough president are aligned on something, you totally ISAP the speaker. It just provides for, I mean, look, the argument is, number one, the city council / bureaucracy stymies so many building projects and abilities for this to happen that this is a long time coming, but then the problem is you're cutting out democratic process. People that I've talked to, I just had a source conversation the person was like, I believe Mamdani ultimately supports these housing proposals, but has been told by the unions, especially DC 37, which is a big, powerful union, and city council members who, if he's mayor, he'll have to work with. He just doesn't want to get into a fight unnecessarily and would rather just not influence it. But the problem is, you know, it came up once. I asked him about it. I did a story on it. It came up during the debate. And now he's gotten questions on this ever since, you know, pretty much every day on the campaign trail. And he's just saying, I haven't taken a position.
Which is kind of absurd because the election is on Tuesday. And I think he has said that he's voting yes or no. And is he going to tell us before then which way he's going to vote?
Another thing too is the
the
Long Island City rezoning is in his district. And he also won't take a position on that. The only thing he said is he wants the parks that are within the rezoning to be connected. But like, that's not even that's not the question. It's not the question. The question is, do you care about the affordable housing proposal?
I mean, the bottom line is that these housing proposals will take power away from the city council, and that's why the council is against it. But the irony is that they're pro-housing, right? They're supposed to make it easier in various ways to build affordable housing, which the council, in theory, is for.
But they haven't done it.
But they don't want to lose the power. But so then you have this weird coalition where it's these very progressive council members against the ballot questions and more conservative NIMBY types who are against the ballot question. It's a really
Which again is the
alignment.
whole problem with building in New York City. It's like you either need massive subsidies or you need to just like bulldoze something through for anything to get done.
Can you tell us about question one?
We're going to not talk about question one because
we're
not talking about question one. We're actually going to take a short break for our podcast listeners, our YouTube listeners. Stick right here. We are going to come back and talk about Mamdani's proposals.
The name is Mamdani, M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it. We just had a former governor say in his own words that the city has been getting screwed by the state. Who was leading the state? It was you!
What has pained me as a New Yorker is that this city, it's a city of possibility. It's a city where people come here to live out their dream, but it's one where we're making it such that you can't even afford to take a swing for most people, because if you don't land it, you'll have to leave.
Listen to New Yorkers. You know, a year ago we began the campaign, and we said then what we say now. We're going to freeze the rent for rent-stabilized tenants, make buses fast and free, deliver universal childcare. It wasn't because we had commissioned a poll, we couldn't afford a poll. It was because we'd actually spoken to New Yorkers and heard from them at their doorsteps, at their bus stops, as they were walking through their city, of what they were facing, and they were saying it was the cost of living.
Okay, so huge promises on the campaign trail. And recently, Jano Lieber was on our air and just threw cold water on the bus idea, saying you can't do fast and free buses because, one, we're bonded out expecting a certain amount of revenue, and $1 billion comes from bus revenues every year. How are we going to deal with the finances of that? If everyone starts hopping on the bus, aren't we going to need new buses? You're not calculating the amount of money it would take for capital funds to do that. And 3, we studied congestion pricing for 1 billion years. How many years did we study congestion pricing?
It was almost a billion.
Yeah, 6 maybe. Anyway,
longer than Bobby's been alive.
You're not going to do a study on this. You're just going to, what's the word?
Plow ahead.
I was thinking of a bus analogy, but I couldn't think of accelerate it, push it, whatever. Yeah. But
you do really
drive
it
New York Post. Drive it through. So we'll start there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how much Jano Lieber has talked about it before, but
Jano Lieber is the head of the MTA.
He's a post
but he has
follow this closely.
Yeah,
but
our listeners probably know who he is, but we'll just.
I mean, obviously he makes some good points, but I also think it's interesting that one of the arguments is like, well, what if this is so successful that we need to buy new buses? Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah,
we're going to have to hire more people, but like that's kind of the idea, is that it's so successful that we have to run more service.
But it's not bringing in revenue.
It's not bringing in revenue.
Right, that's
right,
the
no,
problem.
of course. So that's,
and the MTA needs so much money for like so many other programs and building things.
I mean, this is a question with all of Mamdani's plans, right? It's going to cost, in this case, I think the estimate was something like $700-800 million. And then Lieber said it's actually probably going to be more than that.
Yeah.
And that money has to come from somewhere. And then he said they've been I mean, this is the other irony that you hear a lot of people say, like, we're going to make buses free, but most people don't pay anyways.
Yeah. That's the other thing, right?
But then Lieber says, well, we're making progress on fare evasion, so like we're making more money now from the buses, and then we're gonna lose that. I don't like totally follow the logic.
At some point you're like, this makes no sense, because I mean, there was a study that came out within the past couple of years where it was like fare evasion. The MTA was trying to recoup something like $500 million for fare evasion, and if that's wrong, I apologize. But either way, it's a large fact check me. Where's Samantha Liebman when we need her? But like basically, like everyone from the Partnership for New York City and the MTA were like, we're trying to recoup this money as the MTA is not only trying to, you know, pay for operations, but then also upgrades and just keep up with demand. So the Fast and Free bus program, I mean, look, it was a pilot program that was successful. If you talk to Mamdani or if you talk to Michael Gianaris, the state senator that also co-sponsored it, it only lasted for a short amount of time, and it also was it wasn't the whole city, right? It was
one route in each borough, right?
And they said that, look, like assaults on drivers went down, that it was very successful, and they're using all these metrics. But what they're not talking about, again, is the potential for more buses, more wear and tear on them. The fact that if there's no revenue, you know, the MTA is still beholden to their bondholders. I mean, it's a whole, and then, I mean, Samantha Liebman, again, one of our colleagues, did a story comparing it to a free bus program in another state where it was a complete disaster. Rolling homeless shelter, cost a lot of money. They ended up not continuing it.
I think the bigger problem is making them fast. Like,
Sure, yeah.
I mean, this has been an issue forever. Like, how are you gonna magically make the buses faster without completely redesigning the streets?
The bus, I mean, if you talk to my friends, they're like, the bus is the biggest hack, because it really is a great alternative to the subway. Again, if it moves. So that's the problem, especially in Manhattan. And I drive to stories. Sometimes I'm like, what was the point of congestion pricing? It's just as slow, if not slower, and more congested. People drive in the bus lane. People are parked in the bus lane. The bus is just, you might as well just walk or get on a city bike.
So that's proposal number one from Mamdani, obviously.
But look, it's super popular.
Yeah, bring some challenges. Right? So proposal number two, we'll say, is the universal child care. We obviously have up to 3K now, and there's some issues with the 3K program and people getting seats with that. And he basically wants to expand it until for
6 months.
6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks olds.
It's kind of expensive.
Yeah. So that price tag is billions of dollars. And in order to pay for it, he says he's going to raise taxes. And we know where Kathy Hochul stands on that issue. In fact, she got booed at the rally over the weekend because of it.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was at the rally, and like videos and audio don't do it justice being there, because I was like right in the middle, and the whole stadium is just screaming at her, tax the rich, tax the rich. And she was like, I hear you. But then they like wouldn't stop, and Mamdani had to come out and save her and raise her hand so that his cheers helped her get off the stage nicely. But so Hochul's been against raising income taxes, but if I were a betting man, I would say that she's also exploring, you know, other means, maybe other taxes. I mean, she doesn't have to just raise income tax. She could raise a corporate tax. She could do pied-à-terre.
Which Mamdani has also said that he would raise.
Right.
And he's kind of changed his tune. He says
if we can get the money in other areas.
What matters is that we get the money. It doesn't matter how we get the money. So I think he's okay with no tax increase.
And Hochul has said that she supports universal child care. Right. I don't know if that means expanding it statewide, but she definitely says she's in support of that, which is different than the previous governor. And that's also something that like Republicans and Democrats, people can get on board with, because one of the biggest drivers of people leaving the city to go to a Westchester or Jersey is like making the decision, well, I have kids, or before you even have kids, where am I going to send them to school? Can I continue to work, or what is my help going to be like?
No,
so
I mean,
the city needs to figure it out.
It's an enormously popular idea.
Yes.
And Hochul, and Hochul she's made it one of her issues as well. Yeah,
child care tax credit, middle class tax cut, which was a small tax cut, but still.
And the mayor Adams has been implementing. He's tried to start some pilot programs and like some smaller scale initiatives. So it's not like people think universal childcare is a bad idea. It's just really, really, really complicated and expensive. I think Mamdani has said $6 billion, which actually seems low to me, because I mean it's much more ambitious than even universal pre-K, because universal pre-K, which de Blasio implemented, it was more structured, and you could mostly create programs inside of the existing schools.
Right.
But universal childcare, I mean, you're talking about kids from 6 weeks to 3-4 years old.
Right.
I guess he's talking about it going up to. He's going to talk about it going up to 2, because 3K already exists. But anyway, the point is, you have this huge web of private providers. There's questions about how much you would pay caregivers.
Yeah.
And it's going to take years
to build
it out.
Yeah.
If the money's even there, which is a huge question.
And then also there's the federal compounding thing, which is, the state relies, and so does the city, on like federal share for, half of the state's, or a third of the state's budget is comprised of federal dollars. If there's places like the Medicaid healthcare budget that is getting trimmed in any way, the state's going to have to fill in the hole, and that means there's less money for everything else. So, and I was with the governor earlier today. Today is Thursday, and she said, I right now am not interested in just like raising taxes because we're not getting money. Like, we need to figure out what's happening with the shutdown before we can present like the rest of our financial picture. And actually, look, if Wall Street's doing well, like right now, the state's financial plan is supposed to come out, their updated financial plan. We're going to see higher than expected tax receipts yet again. So Mamdani could look at that and say, well, why, instead of giving out stimulus checks like Hochul did last year, why don't you put some of that money into these programs that people support? Look at the polling.
Yeah, but that's not a recurring revenue stream necessarily. That could potentially, a lot of economists, including Jamie Dimon and, people, financial leaders are not threatening, but they're predicting that there is a fiscal cliff ahead, and maybe there's an AI bubble, and perhaps there's some real risk with.
Look at Jamie Dimon and David Solomon. So JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. What are both of those companies doing? They're not reinvesting in New York. Yes, I know JP Morgan just opened up their brand new, beautiful building in Manhattan, but they're not backfilling jobs in the city. They're going to Salt Lake City, and they're going in Utah, and they're going to Texas. Those are people making 6 figures. Those are people that could be sending their kids to schools and could be contributing to, can afford to go out to dinner, can afford to buy a condo or a co-op at $1 million or more. They're not buying in the city. They're not contributing to the tax base. And that's the reason why the tax conversation is so fraught, because the governor and other financial heads or economic experts say the problem is the balance is so precarious. You have an inordinate amount of pressure on the wealthiest to pay like the majority share. And if that gets imbalanced, we're all going to have to pay more.
Right. And then, of course, Mamdani makes the counterpoint that it's the lower and middle income New Yorkers who are leaving because
they can't afford
it.
It's everybody, though. Yeah. It's everybody.
Everybody's leaving.
All right. So the final proposal is we have one more. We have one more. The rent.
Stop the tape.
The rent freeze, people. Rent freeze. And last week, it was reported that there are 6 out of 9 positions on the Rent Guidelines Board. The Rent Guidelines Board, we should remind our listeners, viewer people, that they are the people who set how much your rent can increase in the stabilized apartments, 1 million stabilized apartments all across the city. That is the rent freeze we're talking about, just for those apartments, not for like fancy apartments or other apartments.
Or just regular market rate.
Or just like regular apartments. We're just talking about this universe of apartments. Those rents are sent by the Rent Guidelines Board, a 9-member body appointed by the mayor. And apparently there are 6 holdovers left on this board with expired terms. The New York Post reported that Mayor Adams is concocting a plan to, if Mamdani wins, appoint people to that board who would be anti-rent freeze, and that would put a real wrench in Mamdani's plan.
Yeah, politics for you. Well, you guys have covered the city longer than I've been alive. I'm just kidding. But if the mayor, let me just ask, if the mayor ends up appointing these people, they serve at the pleasure of the mayor though, right? Mamdani could fire them.
No, but there's a whole, apparently in the law, there's an issue where they have to be fired for cause, and they have some redress where they can argue. So if Mamdani can't just come in and clear out the board,
field, right.
But this is the whole thing, right? Mamdani had promised inherent in the campaign promise to freeze the rent was that he was going to stack the board with his appointees who are all for a rent freeze. And now Mayor Adams seemingly wants to sabotage that. It's just crazy to me, though, that Mayor Adams would want part of his legacy to be purposely sabotaging the idea of a rent freeze.
He might be a little bitter.
Yeah.
He had an address today. I mean, this is separate. We weren't going to bring it up, but he had a random, I don't know if you want to call it random, an address today that was put out 15 minutes before it started about anti-Semitism and an art exhibit that he says was like very anti-Semitic on Governor's Island. So
yeah, I mean, it said like F Israel and like a map.
But that said, like he's playing to a certain group of voters. We know that Adams has always been close to the real estate industry. Like perhaps if he does something like this, there would be a nice job for him at Related or something, not related. I don't know, some company like further on down the line. I have no idea.
He's already got his dream job, he said. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the housing, with the Rent Guidelines Board, I mean, Mamdani's been saying this really since day one, that was one of his like day one things that he would handle.
And a relatively easy promise, right? Compared to free buses or universal childcare, the rent freeze is easy. He just appoints people to the board who are pro rent freeze.
But it goes to show just like how difficult, I mean, being mayor or just like dealing in this environment is. Like you promise something and you're not in power yet. Tough luck. Look who is. So it's like, I mean, I feel like Mamdani has been learning on the job as he goes. I mean, it's so different being a backbench state assemblyman representing Astoria, being one of 150 members in the assembly, and like at that being on the far left. So I mean, really, it is true.
So
like
all of a sudden being an international celebrity with a whole lot of potential power and a lot of people paying attention to you and
a lot of people
promises.
Trying to thwart your plans.
But also it's why like his past messaging and tweets and like opinions on XYZ are now, I mean, everything is up for grabs because it's like, you know, Bobby might be mouthing off on Twitter, but he's not the one who's running for mayor. Zohran Mamdani is. So everything that he says truly is fair game for questions, and he needs to be able to explain himself.
It is going to be an interesting road ahead, but that is going to be the final word.
Long and winding road.
I guess the singing is the final word. Ahead, the next time you hear from us, we are going to tell
We're going to have a new mayor.
Who the new mayor is.
Maybe.
Which is
hopefully.
Why would we have?
We're
definitely going to have a new mayor. There's definitely.
If it's too close to call.
Okay, so you'll hear from us on election night, though. So just stay tuned. We'll be with you. Keep on listening, watching. Obviously, tune into our election night coverage. We will all tell you all night long
on YouTube or New York 1
what is happening. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Remember, you can watch us on Inside City Hall every weeknight at 7 o'clock. Watch our election coverage. We love your feedback. Send us an email at yourstoryNewYork1@charter.com. You can subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a review. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman. Thanks for listening. We'll see you with the new mayor.